Hey everyone, welcome back to session 15 of the ACP-620 study guide. Ronnie is now the one with technical problems, but I just wanted to make sure if y'all can hear me. So if I can get a +1 in the chat, if you are able to hear me, that would be great. Just because I'm not sure if Ronnie was the problem or if I'm the problem. But if I can get a +1 in the chat, if you can hear me, that would be awesome, so we can get started. I just dropped a message here in the chat. So a +1 in the chat if you can hear me, because everything on my end says you should be able to hear me, but with all the technical problems we've been having. All right, Liz Tanner says loud and clear. All right, awesome. So I'm going to continue with where we left off with Ronnie. I am trying to figure out where Ronnie left off, as we did not do a good job at communicating this. And so bear with me for 1 second. Maybe Ronnie's coming back. Ronnie, if you can hear me.
I can finally hear you.
Okay. Because I was like, I don't even know where to start. I was going to start back in what are plans.
That may not be a terrible idea. I did the best I could. I am not the master of plans. That is Dr. Jira. So
should we do a quick run through, just see what my 2 cents are on each one, and then you stop me when we catch up?
I think that's a great plan.
All right. So we'll start with what are plans, and just so that I can get the credit too, because I need to get my credits here. So in case you've missed it, plans are a overview of Jira. And so I like to tell people that plans sit on top of Jira. I also like to tell people that they're called jars, but Ronnie doesn't like it when I tell people that they're called a jar. Jira
I don't think it's a great name, because Atlassian's just going to change their name in 2 months anyways, because it's what we call plans or jars or whatever. It's had like 4 different names in the history of Atlassian.
Yep. So yeah, so plans sit on top of Jira, and I think this is very critical. I think it's important for you to know that, because a lot of people confuse the plan with being like a replacement to the Jira project, and it's not. It pulls in, and it is inspired by the Jira project itself. So the work items have to live in a Jira project. The plan just gives you a good bird's eye view, 30,000-foot view of what's going on. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is that this capability, at least in the cloud, is only available for premium and enterprise customers. So if you're not premium or enterprise, you're going to have a little bit of a bad luck type of situation. All right. Let's see. Navigating the plan. So I'll just kind of quickly talk about these things. So summary is a really cool view. Each Jira project has a summary view, but the summary view in the plan is kind of cool because since the plan, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but the plan allows you to bring in data from multiple Jira projects. So one of the benefits here, in addition to the fact that you get a bird's eye view, is you don't just get a bird's eye view of one project, but you can get a bird's eye view of many projects. And so the summary view is different than the summary view you get in a regular Jira project, because that summary view is only for that one Jira project. But if you have your marketing, legal, developers, and testers team in 4 different projects, with the plan, you can unite them all, and your summary view is not going to show you an aggregated view. This does come with some challenges, because if your teams are all in very different processes, like different workflows, different work types, then you're going to have chaos. And so one of the things you're going to probably want to do is organize your chaos a little bit. The timelines where you're going to spend most of your time in, this is the view that we're seeing on the screen. It's where we have these date bars, as more people commonly know it as a Gantt chart. So this is the Gantt. The program view is kind of cool. I don't know if we get to talk about it in this training, but I'm starting to love and learn to love the program view. But basically, if you're a safe organization, you get all the work, and then you can pre-plan the next 6 sprints, which in true Agile, I'm not for it, but in safe, this is the way. So that's kind of cool. Calendar views, all right. Yeah. I got to rewatch The Mandalorian. Calendar views, all right. I don't use it for any interesting particular reason. So I don't typically work off of a calendar view, but it's there. Teams are great if you're going to do capacity planning, and capacity planning specifically back in the program view. And so if you're using program, you're probably going to want to use Teams. Releases are cool if you want to track not just the release of one project or one team working on a release, but multiple people. And dependencies is my absolute favorite view, which it allows you to see in a very organized way all of the order of operations of all the work you need to do. It's kind of cool from that perspective. All right. So matching pairs. This is the one that I kind of vaguely heard you on Tuesday saying that these are 101.
They are just straight across.
There we go. This one to this one, this one to this one. There we go. I cheat. Okay. So you finish that first one, and
Now,
then
to be
we create a
clear,
plan.
because we are studying for an exam here, you will never see a question like that on the exam. That's not the kind of question they do. I have not seen it in how many exams do I have I taken now?
So you were saying if you see it though, be cautiously aware that they're trying to trick you.
Possibly. Really carefully read the answers and the question.
Very, very carefully. Okay. So let's get started with creating a plan. This, by the way, fun little fact. Ronnie, I don't think I've spoken to you publicly about this, but I had a talk at Team 25 about plans.
Yes,
And
I'm
my
aware.
opening slide was, let's create a plan together. But my dumb butt, I should not have done what I am about to tell you. But my dumb butt decided to ask the room, how many of you have made a plan before? And in fact, why don't we do it again? Let's make the same mistake twice. In the chat, hit a +1 or let us know in the chat, have you ever made a plan before? And Ronnie, as you're probably going to notice in a few seconds, a lot of people are probably going to start typing in, yep, I've created a plan. And so here I am sitting in front of 200 people. And my presentation is how to get started with Jira plans. And 90% of the room, 80% of the room, they're like, yep, we've made a plan. And I'm like, great. What do I teach a room full of people that already know everything that's in the rest of the slides? So guess what I decided to do, Ronnie?
Okay. What did you do?
I decided to go off script.
Oh, there was your first mistake.
That was because I was like, my script was how to make a plan.
We have two people who have responded in chat who have not. So,
oh, Sarah has not. Okay, see, but that's kind of the consensus that I got, right? So for 200 people, I had 180 people that had created a plan, and I had 20 that didn't. And unfortunately, the 20 that didn't are the ones that filled out the feedback on the course, and they let me know that they were baited and switched. So, lessons learned is what I'll tell you. Lessons learned. All right. Well, let's talk about creating a plan. We're gonna walk through the steps here, but one of the things that I want you to be aware, and I'll re-echo this, is that when you're creating a plan, first you need to make sure you're on the premium version of Jira, because if you're not, then you're kind of dead on arrival. So if you are in the premium version or enterprise version of Jira, you'll have plans. And what you want to do then is hit the little plus button, and you want to give your plan a name. And this is really where I like to start my conversation, because when you're creating a plan, it's too primitive. It's too simple to just think of a Jira project to a plan. It will work. It does that really, really well. But plans are designed to really give you a good bird's eye view of everything, of a lot of things. And so I don't like to call my plan the same as my Jira project. I usually like to name my plan something bigger. So whether that's an initiative or whether that's like a product, right? I like to think bigger. Any thoughts, Ronnie?
No, I absolutely agree. If you're naming your plan after your project, you are fundamentally misunderstanding what a Jira project is.
Yeah. Now, to answer Frank's question here, I don't know how, I think data center might be a tad different now, but in the cloud, Frank, we've eliminated Epic Link. And so before, the way it used to work, at least maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, is you start at the subtask. The subtask had a parent, and that parent could be a story, a task, or a bug. And that relationship was defined by a parent and a child. All right. Then Atlassian, now you're up at the story level. And so the story would have a field called the epic link. And that epic link correlated to an epic's name. And so in fact, when you created an epic, you needed to provide the epic with two names: the summary, which is what everybody's used to, and an epic name, which is what will be used by the epic link. And so those two kind of had a match. And that's how that story was linked to an epic. And where things got really hairy is if you were linking the epic up to, like, let's say an initiative, well, then you just use the parent link. And so you could link up, but linking back down was like nearly impossible. So about 2 years ago, Atlassian had a realization that they screwed up royally, and decided to, in the cloud, at least today, as of June 2025, it's all parent-child, up and down, no matter where you are. Every relationship up is a parent, and every relationship down is a child. And Jira just knows, and the way it knows where it is in the hierarchy is based on your gear over here and based on your work type hierarchy. And so when you define your hierarchy inside of this screen here, then Jira will know, okay, I'm at the initiative. That means my parent is defined as a theme, and that means my child is defined as an epic. So it just knows based on this. And so it'll treat this as its truth. So you don't have to worry about epic links or parent links or anything anymore. Everything's just a parent-child. Now back to the plan. Give this a name. I like to call this a new product, right? Something big, something that you're going to have a lot of moving parts to. Because again, you can just do a single project that's going to work really, really well as well, but you're not going to get the same value, I think. Access is up to you. What did you tell
That's
them
one
about
thing we
access?
were. I told them basically the same thing. Private means it's just you and the individuals you allow to be able to see or edit it. Open allows everyone to be able to see it. I don't think everyone has the ability to edit until you add them as an editor, but I could be wrong on that for open.
Yeah, there's permissions that allow you. We'll take a look at them in a second, but there's different permissions that you got to put people in groups in, and then those groups you then have certain power. Okay, so I always like to leave them open, but just be careful because I think I mentioned this one during my cutting off in and out of the internet. Your permissions in your projects are going to dictate who can edit and who can create and who can do anything inside of the plan. And so if somebody doesn't have access to create, they're not going to be able to create work inside of the plan. And if somebody doesn't have the edit permission or the transition permission in the project, then they're not going to have that same permission in the plan. Okay. So you can leave it open, because the reason I say you can leave it open is because if somebody's going to mess it up in the plan, they're going to mess it up in the Jira project because they have the permission over there. So it doesn't matter. You're screwed either way, right? So if someone's going to make a mistake, it doesn't matter if they make the mistake in the plan or in Jira. You're working out the same single source of truth. So there's that. Next up is the work. Now, this is where things can be controversial. Most of the problems that I see with people making a plan is because they went with the filter route. The filter route is a subset of your data, typically. Not all the time, but can be, right? And that gets you into some trouble because if you're subsetting your data, right, you're building criteria for what data you're pulling into your plan. If at any point you create a new work item and it doesn't meet that criteria, poof, it disappears from your plan. And everybody always goes whiskey tango foxtrot, like where did my work go? And I have to go look at your issue sources, and most of the time you have a filter, or your sources are a filter, and your whatever new item you just created didn't meet the qualifications of your filter. So you end up screwing yourself up more than you help yourself with the filter.
That's one thing we talked about. I told them, look, about good 80% of the time I'm doing a board or a collection of boards. About 10% of the time I'm doing project or collection projects, and maybe only 5% of the time am I using a filter, because it is so easy to get that messed up and lose work off your plan.
Yep. So I would say my recommendation is always pick a project. Pick the board if you're going to do capacity planning. That's a little bit more rare. But I would say 70% of the time, you're okay with just picking a project. So pick projects. You can add as many as you want, up to 5,000 issues. Unfortunately, Atlassian used to have a cool little number up here that would tell you how many issues or work items were being pulled in. Atlassian, for whatever reason, thought it'd be a great idea to remove it. Don't know why, because I need that number. Anyways, that's how you create your plan. So very easy. You hit the create button. Um, you have some exclusion rules. So if you wanted to bring in, so right now I said bring in the whole project, but you're like, Alex, I don't want to see everything. It's better, trust me, it's better to bring it all in, and then it's better to exclude stuff because now you have control. So you can go to your plan settings here, and there's an exclusion rule that you can change things like take out any epics that you don't care for, take out any subtasks if you don't care for the subtasks, or if you don't want to see anything in a status of done, you can take those out. One thing that really screws people up as well is that when you move something to done, 30 days later, that item will be gone from your plan. And so if you're doing quarterly planning, that's not usually good. So I, at a minimum, bump this to 100 so that I can at least see my quarter. But it's very common that that's another very common question that I get is like, okay, I can't see my work. And so the first one is like, well, what's your source? Is it in your source? And then the second one is, well, what's your exclusion rule say? Because by default, it's 30 days. So 9 times out of 10, people, when they tell me they have a problem, I go, well, when did you move it to done? And they're like, I don't know, like 2 months ago. I'm like, well, there's your problem. Okay. And then you can exclude releases as well.
I mean, you could, but why would you want to?
Yeah. I mean, like Ronnie said, like you could, but why would you want to? All right, moving on. Ronnie, to bigger important questions. Did you pick up a Switch 2?
I did not. I am not convinced about the Switch 2 being an appropriate value when I have a perfectly functional Switch 1. There just wasn't enough there to justify the extra expense when mine works just well.
Yeah.
And is collecting dust.
In the chat, did you guys pick up a Switch 2 and how do you feel? Because I'm on Team Ronnie here. I don't think for $500, I'm not picking one up just yet. And then for an $80 Mario Kart game, I'm definitely not overly the topics jumping into that.
I'm not even playing my Switch 1 right now. So why am I picking up an extra Switch for games I don't want to play?
Yep. No, my little cousin waited in line. He did a pre-order yesterday and he waited in line to go pick up his pre-order. But he's like, are you picking one up? I'm like, I don't know that I want to spend $500 on playing Mario Kart.
Again, I did wait in line for the Switch 1. I felt that was a good value proposition. Even though I had a 3DS, I was playing my 3DS in line because I was that bored. But I did feel that value proposition there.
Barney,
I do not get that.
That is something on my bucket list. I want to do like a Comic-Con or something nerdy with you.
I mean, September, we got something going on here if you want to fly out this way.
Do you? Which week? Because I'm going to be out in Napa Valley with Sean Doyle at a DevOps conference.
Labor Day weekend, unfortunately.
Is that the week of the 8th? Or the week after?
I think it is.
The week after. Is Labor Day the 8th?
It's the first Monday of September, typically.
Oh, boy. My map won't tell me. When is Labor Day, people?
So it's August 30th through September 1st.
Okay, so yeah. So in the following week, I'll be in Napa. So maybe. We'll see. Okay. Anyways, little interruption. Nintendo Switch is on my mind this morning. As I'm seeing all the people doing the unboxings. Okay, so adding your data to your plan. So once you've pulled in your project data, you should already have information in there. But what's cool, what I like about the plan is that you can have an initial set of data, but you also have the ability to add more work. And I prefer to add my work from the plan because I can create all of the children and all the descendants in one view very, very, very quickly. Unlike in Jira, where you have to do a couple more clicks. And so you just click on this plus button, you pick the project that you want to do it in, you pick what kind of work you want to create, and then Bob's your uncle. Now, this right here, folks, is the most important part of this whole training. When you do any change inside of Jira, okay, when you do any change inside of Jira, when you do any change inside of the plan, I gotta say that twice now. When you make any changes inside the plans, any editing, any creating, anything, any change whatsoever, it goes into this unsaved changes button up here. And unless you click this button, unless you click this blue magical button, nothing that you do in your plan gets pushed to Jira. It stays in the plan, which is not the same in reverse. Any changes you do in Jira immediately show up in the plan after a refresh, but immediately show up in the plan. But any changes you do in the plan will stay in the plan until you hit the publish button up here. So keep that in mind because it's very, very important.
We did harp on that point a lot on Tuesday's show.
Okay, perfect. So I won't harp on it more. It sounds like our folks here like gaming. Maybe we need to turn this into like, let's study Jira while we're playing games, Ronnie.
I've got this plan that I really just need to implement that I think would be fun. Now, it's only a Jira admin's idea of fun, but I think it would be fun.
Well, it sounds like we have enough nerdy people. I should do a shout out that while you all are here, when I'm not with Rodney, just very shameless plug-in, but my little cousin and I, we started a little podcast called Evocative Gamer. So I'm gonna just drop it here in the chat. We talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly on gaming stuff. So if you guys ever want to relive your childhood, we talk a lot about 90s gaming and stuff like that. And obviously the current state of gaming. But we cross-reference the current state of gaming with 90s gaming. So if any of you are interested, go show some love over there. All right. This was interesting, Ronnie. So this company and team managed projects, for the longest time, team managed projects couldn't be used inside of
even when they can, the restrictions I was reading just make it like, why would you want to?
Yeah. And because now I don't know how to explain. So one of the benefits, one of my favorite features here, right, is this is one of my the reasons why I use plans. And so we have an epic here. It's called install showering system, right? It's a TJC ticket. But when I go to create a story, right, I can pick a different project to house that story. Okay, and when I hit enter, assuming I have the right permissions, that story is now created under that epic, but lives in a different Jira project. And you can't do this inside of Jira, right? You can't open up an epic and create a child in a different project. It won't let you. Furthermore, if you're using team managed projects, this is not even allowed. And so I don't see why people even use team managed projects to begin with. But if you're crazy enough to do them, then keep that in mind that they're compatible now. Here are the differences. You can't use custom fields to create it in team managed projects. And work items in team managed projects can only have a parent epic from the same project. They can't use the additional hierarchy levels above the epics. So these are, to me, non-starters to begin with. Barney, are you taking the team or are you taking the chat in a whole different conversation?
Yes, I am.
And 3, you can't use statuses or work items created in team managed projects in the exclusion rule. So again, I think the cons outweigh the benefits. So folks, just do yourself a favor. Don't use team managed projects. Adding users to your plan. So if you, I think this is different. So you can create teams, and this, my 2 cents, is something you should investigate cautiously. I'm not a fan of creating teams in plans. In fact, I actively avoid creating teams. And Ghost says a wise man once. So, Ronnie, CNC to me is the computer
numerical control is what you're thinking of, but what Liz is thinking of is Command and Conquer.
I've never played.
That shows.
So growing up as a child, we'll do story time again. Growing up as a child, I grew up. My parents would buy me 1 to 2 games for like my birthday, and 1 to 2 games for Christmas. And
Mhm.
every once in a while, when I got good report cards, that's when I would get, another out of cycle game
Not
that I
me.
didn't always get.
Just the two events. And by the way, my birthday is right around Christmas, so it's only one time a year I got any games.
Yeah. But my little cousin, the one I do this podcast with, his mom bought him everything under the sun. So I was constantly at his house playing video games. But I grew up with a strong passion and love for video games. It's something that I enjoyed so much as a kid. So much, right? So much that
Hmm.
my kids, I don't even think that my kids not know what a game is. Like they're on Roblox the moment they open their eyes to the moment they close their eyes.
Hmm.
um,
So to take this on a completely different direction, Ghost is trying to convince us not only to have "Don't Use Team Managed Project" T-shirts, but to do a flash mob of people wearing the T-shirt at Team 26.
as a social movement, we need to find sponsors for that. If somebody wants to sponsor us buying like 500 t-shirts that we can give away, I think
I
that would be
think
cool.
um, I think Liz is trying to get you to play Command and Conquer because it is. I played it as a kid. It is a fantastic game. I think I borrowed someone's computer to play it while I was babysitting one time. That's really the only time I played it, but it's kind of similar to StarCraft.
No, buddy.
Did you
I grew up with PC gaming. For me was non-existent other than The Sims.
why did you not tell me you never played StarCraft when I was working for Blizzard? I could have given you it for free.
I don't know, Ronnie. I I grew up and my dad was very strict on. I had consoles and my dad's like, you can play your games on consoles, but you can't use your computers for productivity. And so I never got used to playing games on a PC. Even to this day, like it doesn't feel right. My kids though, we were trying to play Halo the other day, and my oldest son, he's like a pro gamer. He's on games all day long. And we were playing Halo, and I'm like, "Are you okay there, buddy? You're not moving correctly." And I'm like, "I know you're a pro gamer." And he's like, "It's this dumb joystick." He's like, "I need my mouse and my WASD." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, man?"
Yeah, the Lost.
So,
I'm one of those weird gamers. I'm perfectly comfortable on both. That being said, I've been loving the Steam Deck since I got it.
I might have to pick.
Um,
I need to get into. So that's what the whole reason I was going down the story route is. Now that I have money to buy any game I virtually want, and have zero time to play the games. Okay.
isn't that how it works?
Yeah. So I would say creating teams and compound boards, you want to be very careful because, when you create teams in general, be very careful. Atlassian pushes it, but they have some unintended consequences that I won't rant about here because we're already off topic. But yeah, just use them cautiously.
Hmm.
Configure planning style for your team. So for compound teams, you can configure how many hours of work your team completes. So when you're setting up the team, when you're setting up your teams inside your plan, you have to and this is an interesting one, Ronnie. If you create a team in here and you make it plan only, it literally means just plan only, which is weird. Like I would have thought that I don't even know why that's an option. Like
Yeah,
it
we had a
shouldn't
whole
do.
rant about the org-wide teams and how that could really mess up your org if you're not careful with it. And even colloquially told your horror story about when Atlassian made that change.
Yep. Okay. So, anyways, make the team. If you're gonna make a team, this is where I would do it. Just in the plan, since the only time you're gonna do capacity planning is in your plan, anyways. And this at least shields you a little bit more from the greater impact of using teams. So, like, this is like Team Xbox, just to piss people off. Who's on Team Xbox? Let me hear it.
I used to be. Then the Xbox One said, no, just
Okay.
no.
And so this Kanban, this planning styles where you pick. So if you go Kanban, you use hours, and if you go Scrum, you use sprints and story points. I think I just lost all respect that Liz had for me.
Probably.
All
We'll
right, so
work on it.
it's Microsoft. Yeah, I'm not. I think Microsoft is off the edge right now with their console gaming.
I'm sorry. When I read this question yesterday and saw Jensen, I thought of one person and one person alone,
Do you
and
like
she is
Jensen?
not a he.
Oh, that Jensen. I was thinking of
Yeah,
Jensen. The only person I'm thinking when I see Jensen is Nvidia's Jensen.
no, I was thinking of Atlassian's Jensen, who is a good friend of the channel.
Liz says with okay, Liz, I put Xbox to piss people off. I'm not team Xbox anymore. I used to be a long time ago. Back
But
I
then
would
the
say
Xbone
360,
happened.
yeah, 360 days and then Xbox One just kind of killed everything. Okay. So Jensen, not neither Jensen that we know. Well, I guess I don't know Jensen from Nvidia. That'd be cool though if I knew him. Is creating a quarterly plan for his department. The team in his department use the teams in his department use several different projects to track their work, so Jensen includes all of them in his plan. Jensen creates an exclusion rule to remove all the work items in an on hold status from the plan. He notices some work items with the status still appear. What could be causing this? Uh-oh.
This one we had to logic our way through, and we got it right, but not for the reason we thought we got it right.
He notices. Okay, so what are the options? So Jensen is using. So he excludes to remove all the work items on an on status from the plan, but then he notices that items from that status still appear. All right, so he's using multiple company projects. Okay, no. He's using a global custom field. No. I would say this one then.
That was our answer too, because all the other ones were ruled out.
But
It's the right answer, but
oh,
the reason is was not what we were logicking.
well, the logic is set it up here, right? It says that whenever you use the statuses in the team managed projects, they can't be included in the exclusion rules. Do you not read?
No, it's why you can't use them in the exclusion rules that just had us.
Kika is creating a plan and needs to create a team. She's on a development team that consistently works with the same projects but doesn't have any Atlassian teams. She wants to be able to create work items within the plan and use them in an existing project board. What is the best type of team? So she wants to use them back outside of the plan. This is why I was telling you when it says plan only, it means plan only. So if you want to use it anywhere outside of the plan for any reason, you have to go with the big one. Like they are not messing around when they say plan only.
Ghost.
I love that one.
We also need this to be a shirt at Team 26, Alex. I know Lena manages our shirt collection on our spring store. If she could just add a couple of these, that'd be great.
I'll do you one better. Because we've gotten in trouble before. We have a Ape Tech t-shirts, epic. Spoilers. There we go.
I love it.
It's been there. And let me assign it to her. Done. I love to say I'm a juror admin. I got issues. All right, Frank. Let's like that one.
Unfortunately, we don't have issues anymore. We have work items, which I'm sorry, Atlassian completely messed up because that was golden before.
I've been thinking like issues crossed out, like arrow work items, and then like cross that out, and then just put like forever issues.
I mean, fair. I have good fun. For those of you who don't join me on the show, Rob Heen, good friend of the channel, does his own learning at 9 a.m. on weekdays, and I'll often join in. And I'm having a lot of fun trying to convince him to say the word issue because he refuses to say it. So I think if we do make this shirt, we have to send one pro bono to Rob Heen.
Yeah, it's that Tuesday gets long, right? Because Tuesdays it's like Rob starts it off at 6 a.m. Pacific, then 7 with me, and then 8 with us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did we get here? Automatically schedule your work.
We did get here.
Okay, because this is something that I've never done before. And so we're going to take a
I
look at.
have done it with varying levels of success. It really does depend how good your team is at doing their estimates.
And
Which
that
means
right there.
to say is no one is ever good at doing estimates.
Yep, that I want to double emphasize because this part will not work if you don't do everything else perfect. And the probability that you're going to do everything else perfect is like near zero. Like I've never seen a team that estimates consistently or equally or in a way that would benefit from the auto scheduler. Everybody tweaks it in their own way, shape, or form, and it's it makes this not work well. But let's go through it. So in plans, the auto scheduler takes the configured scope and resources in a plan to recommend a schedule. You can modify the recommended schedule as needed or implement it exactly as it is. So to auto schedule in the timeline, click on schedule work based on estimates represented by the calendar icon. Choose to overwrite all values in the sprint, release, and team fields or only empty values. That already scares the crap out of me. Preview the results and then accept your changes. So I guess the idea is you create all these stories, you estimate set stories, and then you click a button and magical things will happen.
In theory, but again, you've got to accept the auto schedule, the schedule that the auto scheduler generates, and then you still have to go through and save your work as you would any other changes to a plan. So you have to accept it twice before it actually puts it out onto the Jira issues.
Yep.
So you have two points where you have to mess up before something really bad happens.
So when auto scheduling works, Jira considers several factors to create the ideal schedule for your team. So again, I've never seen this be done correctly to the point where I would use it valuably. But how your team estimates the work, like story points, days, or hours, that's important. Whether your team work in sprints or in a continuous flow. The sprints that work in your plans is assigned to the ranking of the work in the backlog and the dependencies between work items in the backlog. And also the sequence of work items based on start and due dates. So you can change the date fields in your plan. You can change which date fields. Okay. To do so, yeah. Okay.
So you just covered this, but I really want to emphasize this. The auto scheduler does take dependencies into account, but not well. This is definitely something you'll need to double check manually before accepting the schedule.
You also need to configure several other things to ensure that the auto scheduler has all the information you need. So from an estimation, use the right unit. So under plan settings and scheduling, under estimation, use the right unit. Sprint length. If your team uses Scrum, then make sure you put the duration of your sprint correctly. And then capacity. But to do the capacity, then you need to do the team. And so you got to go put the capacity for your team, which means you need to know what your team's capacity is. Because Jared just won't know either.
Which also varies week to week, depending on who's out on vacation, who's sick, who caught the virus that we will not mention. All those
holidays, things. PTO, stuff like that, right? Like there's internet outages. There's just so many variables that to do it automatically just
basically foolish. Whatever you put in for your team's capacity, just know it's already wrong.
Right. And so to auto schedule, this is why I don't care for this feature at all. We also, I think, so Tricia is asking, does the auto scheduler take dependency into account? It seems like it does. We'll have to try it out.
It does, but I've seen it. It'll try and schedule dependencies in order. But if something really just does not work out time-wise, it will overlap dependencies. So that's something you need to manually look out for. At which point, why am I even using an auto scheduler? Why don't I just schedule things out manually?
Yep. So the auto scheduler won't change anything until you accept the changes it proposes. Even then, it will only impact the data as it appears in the plan, not the rest of Jira. So that's at least important.
Mm-hmm.
To implement the changes across Jira, you have to accept the changes in the plan using the Unsave Changes button. So up here. So you can play with it in theory, but not mess up anything until you publish those changes. When you
In
auto schedule,
theory.
you can configure whether the schedule will override field values in the work items for the sprint, release, and team fields. You can overwrite all values or only empty values for each of those 3 fields. For example, a work item was assigned to sprint 1 when it first was created in Jira. Based on values for all of the work, the auto scheduler has determined that work item should be moved to sprint 2. If you've given the auto scheduler permission to override existing values, it will move the work item to sprint 2. If you haven't, then it leaves it in sprint 1. So I don't know. I just don't trust the machine yet.
I mean, I love that it gives you 2 different chances to back out and say, "Nah, bro, this ain't working." That's when you first have to accept the auto schedule, and second, when you have to save the unsafe changes. You could undo everything at either one of those points. Just to be clear, you have to mess up twice to mess up the data in Jira. I said I've used this. This might be the one part of plans where I have more experience than Alex with, and I have never seen it work well for all the reasons we mentioned. Your capacity is never going to be accurate. Estimation is hard, and even when it's not hard, it's never done consistently. Your velocities are never accurate because your teams are going to try and get stuff done last minute, or they'll forget to update their Jira issues to the last minute. So your velocities are going to be all sorts of weird.
Yeah, this is a good question here. So this is something I would want to test. I haven't done it, and I think I'm thinking of doing a follow-up video on this one then, because the working days that you can configure in your plan, I'm assuming. So the one thing that isn't mentioned here, and I'm assuming that this is gonna work if you pull in the board, because if you pull in the project, it doesn't always work correctly. So if you pull in your board, I'm assuming Jira is gonna respect that you have those working days excluded out, and that it should influence, but we're gonna want to test it.
If I remember right, it does take working days, both the global setting and project settings into account. So if your admin has set up your work calendar to include all your holidays in Jira, which they should, if that is a feature they have available to them, it will take that into account and adjust capacity accordingly.
So let's explore an example. So Rama used the auto scheduler for his plan. The proposed schedule is great, but Rama wants to change a few things. First, Rama accepts all the changes proposed by the auto scheduler into the plan. Since the schedule was mostly correct, it's easier to modify the few changes in the plan rather than discard the auto scheduler entirely. Flags indicate the auto scheduler has changed, making it easy for Rama to identify. So here's the auto approve. By accepting, you're gonna basically set this calendar up, and you can accept the changes. All right. Remember, even though Rama has accepted the changes in the plan, it hasn't changed any data because all the changes are over here, which is the updates to the start and due dates, the sprint, the team, all that stuff. So Rama makes a few adjustments to the dates and the duration. So this is what this right here is maybe what would make me want to try it out, because it does a best guess for you to at least get you started, and then you can still tweak it. So I thought that you just have to like accept it at face value. But
No,
if
you
that's
have
not,
an opportunity to change it after you accept it, but before you save the changes to Jira.
yeah, so I might actually want to give this a whirl to try it out, because once you save the changes, then it's all done for you. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna give this a try. I don't think we have time in the next 15 minutes, but I'm thinking of doing a dedicated video and just on
I think
this.
you should explore this. It's an interesting feature. I've never got quite to work 100% to my satisfaction, but still getting 80% of the work done is 80% of the work I don't have to do as a Scrum Master. So, or as a project lead. So, it works.
Yep. All right. Arvo is creating a plan for a Kanban team and wants to use the auto scheduler. What data will the auto scheduler use? So they'll need the I don't know, capacity. Because they need to know the hours, how many hours the team has, the estimation unit, right? They need to know if it's days or hours. We don't care for sprint length. And technically, we have ranking and Kanban. So I would say these 3. What do you think?
I remember when we did this on Tuesday, it was 3 of them. I don't remember which 3, but this feels
What's
right.
those 3?
Again, we had a whole rant about the way Atlassian does those multi-select answers, and there's not as many on the exams now, but there are some, and we understand it's an all or nothing game with those kind of questions.
Eleni uses the auto scheduler in a plan that has issues from the web app sprint board and let it override with all values. When she looked at the backlog for that board, she doesn't see the work in sprints in the auto scheduler. What could be the problem? In other words, when she looks, okay, so she most likely didn't need to save the plan changes it to Jira.
Agreed.
There you go. So define dependencies. And I think this is the topic we're supposed to start off with today.
This is where we got to. So we now.
You could have told me that 46 minutes ago. All right. So what are dependencies? So dependencies in your plans help you avoid bottlenecks by ensuring that required work is scheduled before. So basically order of operations. Rena needs to summarize a report and share it with the executive team, but first Caleb needs to add the most recent data to the report. You can use dependencies to visualize the connection between those 2 work items. You can do dependencies in Jira. This is not a problem, right? You can open up a Jira project, which is mildly annoying to get into a project these days with this new UI. Atlassian, please go back to the old UI.
I'm having an old discussion with people on Reddit about the new UI.
The whole new UI sucks so much. So you can open up any story. You can click add, and there's a linked work item, and you can link things together. You have a couple of relationships you can pick by. Which, by the way, if you're using the plans, it's always the blocks and blocks by, and not any of the other ones. And then you just link it to some other story, task, bug, epic, whatever you want. You click link, and you got them linked. However, visualizing this is challenging. In the plan, it comes to life, and it does it in a very elegant way. And it does it by 2 ways. You can either see badges that tell you, hey, I'm blocked, or there's lines. And I kind of like the lines until you have like 1,000 dependencies, and then the thing goes out the window.
Once you have a whole web of dependencies, you're just in PM hell. There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah. So I like the lines. I like collapsing things though, because the lines to me are very visual. But if you have too many dependencies, then the badges is an option, but then the badges doesn't clearly tell you those dependencies. So I like the lines. Outgoing and incoming dependency. So a dependency can go in 2 directions. It can either be outgoing or it can be incoming. So this helps you determine order of operations, which work needs to come first, and then which work happens next. And so a dependency can go in 2 directions. It can either be an outgoing or an incoming. Work item B can't start until work item A is complete. By the way, this right here is a recommendation, but not a rule in Jira. Like you can work on whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you manage dependencies. Doesn't matter the start and due dates. Oh, by the way, in the plan, this isn't mentioned yet, but in order to do the dependencies, y'all remember how I added this dependency here? That's awesome. But to visually see it in the plan, it has to have a start and due date. Both of them do, because then that's how we get this picture. Because if you don't have the rectangle, then you're not watching your dependency at all. So you need to put a start and an end date, which means you need to start put start and end dates on all your work, which means that's a whole different disciplinary action you got to take. Okay, so work item B has an incoming dependency because it's blocked by a previous work item. Work item A has an outgoing dependency because it blocks a later work item. You can think of the work items connected by dependency as dependent work item and the required work item. Dependent work items are blocked by required work items, and required items block the dependent work items. The dependent work item must be scheduled later than the required, and Jira will tell you it'll be red. So these lines, if you mess up the order or if you mess up the dates, specifically the start and the end, for example, if this one was over here, it'll be red because the start date is before the end date of its dependency. So it doesn't like that. You can map multiple dependencies, but this is easy to do. When you have 2 stories and they depend on one forward, that's very easy. You can just drag and drop. Doing this, you kind of have to go backwards, because if you were to go forward, it's hard to go to a second one. So I find it easiest to go backwards. So to create a dependency, like I just mentioned, you have to put a start and an end date, and then you just drag and drop. Now the dependencies report, this is my favorite feature though, because once you do the homework and you go through all of those steps to link things together, then you get this beautiful graph. And this graph tells you basically the order of operations in a very easy to read view. And it also tells you how many days you're pushing your schedule out, because it tells you based on those blockages.
Again, there's a term here I really want you guys to understand that Atlassian's not going to use because it's not their term, but it's called the critical path, and that's looking at your dependencies. What is the shortest order of operations that has to be done in order to get to your goal? Because that will set the minimum, not the time it's actually going to take your project, but the minimum possible your project could take if you had a limited budget and people and everything worked out great and there was no surprises.
Yeah, all things equal.
So
okay. So Burke has many work items in his plan with multiple dependencies. It's not important to him to see which work items dependencies are between, but he wants to know how many dependencies each work item has. Which dependencies? So the badge.
Yep.
Luciana wants to create a dependency between two work items that are in her plan. What can she do? Where can she do this? When viewing one of the work items, click the add button. Yeah. In the timeline view for her plan. Yeah. In the dependencies report. Ooh, I don't know about that, and I don't know about that one. I don't know that you can add dependencies in the report itself.
Don't think you can in the report. In the board, you kind of can by doing an issue link.
Holy moly, do I hate this new UI. Yeah, you can just view here. Oh, no, you can. See, add a dependency. So everything except for the board.
I would say, I was wrong. Again, you could add an issue link, and that's all it is just an issue link.
Configure releases with plans. So to create a release in the plan, releases are the target deadlines for sections of the versions of your work. Releases appear in the icon here. I love this. This is my milestones. This is how I treat my milestones. So to create a release, you go into the plan and create release. Configure your dates for your release. So releases have a start date and a release date. These dates determine the length of the release. You can use different information to determine the start and the release date. So as early as possible. If you choose as early as possible, the start date when auto-scheduling the plan, the release will start as soon as there are available teams to work on the work item. A fixed date. You can also use a fixed date, which is usually what I do. And then relative to the previous release. This is a new one. I didn't know you could do this. So if you choose a relative to previous release for the start date, you can specify how much time there should be between a prior release and a new release. For example, if you want to work on the beta release to start 1 week after the alpha to let QA have some time. That's cool. I didn't know you can do that. That's not something I've ever played with. But
considering Atlassian will do multiple quote unquote releases in a given day, I wonder if they have some automation.
Yeah, not only that,
for you.
But I'm used to creating the release in the project. And when you create the release here, these options are only in the plan. Like when you create a release over in when you create a release over in the Jira project, you can put a start and an end date, but you don't have this flexibility. So
no.
Important to know. That's why I've never seen it. I've never created a release in here.
Maybe we should.
I know, right? Well, I've done this. I've done the cross release, but I went and still created the releases in the projects first.
Now, I will say this. The cross project releases in years past, when I was first starting out with Jira, was a pain. And in fact, when we were trying to fix that problem, one of the project admins inadvertently deleted one of our releases we were about to do in a couple of weeks. And it's the only time I ever got to ban someone from Jira for a given time.
Okay. Same thing on the other end, right? You can, when you're going to release it, you can choose to release it once all the work items are completed. And then you can also do just the fixed date. I usually do fixed dates because most of the time when you're using releases, you're working with like your product manager. And your product manager usually has a good idea for when they think that something's going to be done.
I just want to answer Frank's question real quick. I know we're short on time. These are the same releases. Just in scheduling them and setting those numbers, you get more flexibility and more automation
In the
when
plan.
you're creating them in the plan than when you are in the project itself. It's the same thing on both sides. You're creating a version inside the project.
Correct. Except the cross project release. That's only in the plan.
Yeah.
But the cross project release, you have to give this a name. And then you got to choose the project and the release. These come from the project itself. So see how I don't have a release here? I'd have to go back. I can either go into the project and create the release, or I can go in here and create like V1, fixed date, fixed dates, and I put my dates like this. And then once I create it here, now when I go do the cross project, I can pick it from here. See, it's now available. So again, you could have had two options. You could have added the release in the project or in the plan. But the cross rod, this cross one, doesn't exist back in the project. It's only in the release. And that's how we do that part. So let's see what we learned, and maybe we can finish this whole section out. DTS team often uses a 2-week sprint after a project is finished to examine their backlog, complete small unrelated administrative tasks, and prioritize non-project work. Dicha wants to account for this time in her plan's release. What's the best option for her? Huh? 2 weeks sprint for...
I would say B.
B?
I would say B.
Sure, let's go with that. There you go. Yay. Okay, last 5 minutes. Last 3 minutes, plan experimentally with scenarios. So I love scenarios. So I kind of like scenarios, but I kind of hate scenarios. And the reason that is because I feel, Ronnie, like any changes in the plan, since they don't get pushed to Jira, that is a scenario.
Yeah.
But the scenarios allow you to change it multiple ways to keep very different versions of the plan. And so you can have one version with certain dates and a different version with the other dates. The problem in my head is like, when would I want to do that? I haven't hit a scenario where I would want to or care to do that. So in Jira plans, you can create different scenarios to explore how changes to work scope capacity affect your plans. A scenario is essentially a separate version of your existing plan where you can modify the dates, assignments, work, and have more however you want. You can create multiple scenarios and switch between them easily. So use a scenario to see how removing a feature from a release or adding more work will affect the schedule. It can be created as best case, worst case, medium scenarios. So basically, you create these scenarios and it basically carbon copies your plan, right? You don't have a new plan, but you have within the plan, you have this toggle here. And then you can give it a color, which I highly recommend you give it a color. And then you can modify things. You can go and change, you can add more work, you can move the dates around. And then you can kind of see how it's going to impact your plan without impacting the other plan. But neither work until you actually push the changes into Jira. So, all right. Hakeem just learned that his team might get support from another team on their current project. He wants to make the changes to his plan estimate and that what project timeline will be with his additional help. The additional team might share 2 of their employees for this project, or they might be able to share 3 employees. What's the best way for Hakeem? So create a scenario. So not this one. Create 2 new plans. I don't think would be right. So we want to create a scenario for with the 2 additional employees, then create a new blank scenario.
I think the middle one is the correct answer.
Do you make a copy of a copy? There you go. Yay. All right. So we are right at time and we're at the last section here, which is configure views and share plans in Jira. So we'll wrap it up here Tuesday.
Yep.
And then rapidly jump into the other ones and try to finish as much as we can before I take the test, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday.
And I would like to note somehow we covered twice as much than what I covered alone on Tuesday. The real world never works like that, people. But this is what happens when you have an expert on teaching this, actually teaching this.
You're funny. Too much credit, Rodney. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, share this with your colleagues, and let us know in the comments and chat, when are you taking the ACP-620? Because you all know I'm taking it on the 14th, but let me know when you're taking it.
9 days. You ready?
I mean, I've gotten like 2 questions wrong so far in this whole 15 sessions, so I think
you'll be fine.
I hope so. All right. I'm probably walking into this one the cockiest, and I'm probably gonna walk out the most sad. All right, bye everyone.
See ya. Bye.
Oh boy. I'm gonna remove that.